and so.
Oh, how appropriate.
Here we go. Let's see here. Yeah, and thanks. I'm glad Rebecca connected us. She's become an awesome asset for Alfa Vedic. She's the one who helped, brought me out to Anarchapulco this year and had Bear do his presentation virtually, and had a really good time.
Oh, you would have Max Lowen. I think she mentioned you.
Yes, actually, Max is not far from us. I do believe she's moving, but she is fairly close, actually very, very close to where our other place is, only like 20 minutes away. Yeah. So there's the echo. Yeah, it's funny, on the way back, catching our flight back home, we had the same flight. So we got to hang a little bit there and connect more. And we had some hang time in Mexico, and I got to know her, and was hoping to maybe go out to lunch with her before she moves. I'm not sure if she's moved yet, but what a wonderful soul she is.
She is. She's a sweetheart. Yeah, one of my favorite people.
Yeah,
as is Rebecca, actually.
Yeah. Rebecca's classic. She did like a comedy routine one night, and just is like, yeah, it's just all over the place. But I will say she's really turned around Anarchapulco in terms of how she's booking it. And really, it was really cool to see a bigger focus on health and wellness, and that element, and also on sort of the more mystical, the more historical things that she brought to the booking there. It was really cool. She's probably going to be in our chat right now. We're live. What's up, guys? We're live with Rachel Vaughn. I'm going to go ahead and hit record and fire this up. Here we go. And thanks again, Rachel, for making time for us today.
Oh, thank you.
And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winner, and I'm here as always with the resilient Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still reigns supreme. I say resilient because Bear is dealing with a bit of the chemtrail cough today.
I may be muting myself regularly or going dark to blow my nose or something.
This is a rare occurrence, in that, like my wife too, who has symptoms of illness, which I know that you've said in the past too, Bear. It's okay. Like, obviously what we talk about is the symptoms are good. It shows your body's doing the work. I just think that she, in the same way that I never seems like she goes poop, she never gets sick. She's got some magical ways about her. And I don't think she's ever farted in her whole life. Sorry, Blakely, if I'm embarrassing you. But
neither have
I. Yeah, Bear. Wow.
Sorry, Rachel. We aren't usually like this, but Mike's on a roll, so we'll go with it.
Feel free.
Just incredible. They've been spraying the heck out of us, and you're feeling it. So we'll power through today, though.
We will.
Today's guest is coming all the way from Oz, from the great island of Australia. And it's so wonderful to have you here, Rachel. I was telling her before the show, and I haven't really announced this on the show, I am going out to Oz to the Living Free Festival, August 23rd to the 25th, with my boy Tom Barnett. Alex Zek's going to be there. I believe, Cal Washington Bear is going to be there, and David Armstrong, of course, and who's helped putting it on. And they've expanded the roster. Actually, a lot more folks are coming. Daniel Roytos, who we're working to get on Alfacast. So it's going to be a blast. Look it up at livingfreefestival.org and get your tickets and come out down under with us. I'll be DJing and doing a talk and hanging out the whole weekend. So I hope to see you guys there. And also Music in Sky, June 20th through the 24th. Bear Lando doing his talk Saturday at 5 on the main stage. He'll be doing a big Q&A and hangout sesh there. So definitely, if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, get them now before we sell out. And that's in Mendocino and Laytonville, California, in the great outdoors. Hope to see you there. musicandsky.com. And today, our guest, Rachel Vaughan, is yet again. We just had Cathy O'Brien on, Rachel, 2 weeks ago. So this is a bit of a theme. Another victim of MK Ultra, now attesting to the unspeakable acts against children and humanity by the darkest of souls in positions of power. Similar to regular Alfacast friend Cathy O'Brien, Rachel draws strength from her early life ordeals to bring light into the shadows. Rachel has proven the existence of an extensive tunnel system through which she was sex trafficked as a child in the 1970s and 80s, and now is working with the ley lines of the earth to thwart this activity. Founded by herself with Ben Hawks, the Ley Down Love Project identifies and works with the natural ley lines to counter the effects of those that have used these channels to further their agenda to keep embodied souls in darkness. The primary mission of the Ley Down Love Project is to take back the ley lines and chakras of the world from the effects of the ritualized practices that have programmed these channels to spread misery for millennia. Interesting. I do want to delve deeper into that, because a lot of times we think of ley lines just specifically sort of like on a positive, energetic, right? But really they're a technology that has a dual aspect to them. Rachel is working to recruit any arm of light souls to unite within the leys to bring in frequencies of harmony, love, freedom, health, and prosperity for all life on earth. You can find out more at the laylovedown.com. And then, of course, check out Rachel's videos on Rumble. She does her own show there. Bear Lando, I will say, as I always do every show, take it away as best you can today.
Okay, thank you. So I got 3 frogs in my throat. I'll do the best I can. Rachel, so happy to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Ley lines are something, as we were talking beforehand, are something that I've been involved with for a while. And, with different technologies, now you have the ability just to see them. I have to use instruments and things to work with them myself. But ley lines, once people understand what they are, they're literal rivers, and we'll get more into the intricacies of that. And the electromagnetics that have been superimposed through Wi-Fi cell towers and everything, it's literally like dumping poison into a river or a pond. And, the good news is there's ways to clear that out, and you're doing that. And then, of course, you're going to tell us about some ritualistic practices of people that not only understand the ley lines, but then deliberately poison them in order to spread darkness. So why don't we start out first with people that, aren't familiar with your background. And, we don't want to dig up the whole past and everything, but maybe the cliff notes as far as how you got here, a little bit about, your early experience. And just like our friend Cathy O'Brien, I never would have believed that these things go on. And in my practice years, early on, I had a number of people, women in particular, that related experiences to me. And to be honest, I didn't believe them. I thought they're making things up, because it wasn't just regular abuse. It was, a real ritualized practice. So I think it's more rampant that what people realize. And then after a while, I was able to verify myself through other channels that, wow, this stuff is really going on. And of course, now it's hitting the mainstream as far as realizing all of our people in power spots, and not all of them, but a lot of them seem to be involved. So maybe tell us a little bit about how that happened in your life.
Okay, I'll try and keep it short. Thank you both for having me on. So I come from a bloodline family, a satanic bloodline family. So we go back to the Kennedys. My father had impunity from prosecution, so his name was Alan Maxwell McIntyre. He was friends to police, and he was a high-up Freemason. I've got a very high-up Freemason as a great-grandfather on my father's side, so we were very well protected. Interestingly, McIntyre means son of a Mason. My very high-up Freemason great-grandfather, Wright, also means Mason. So big Freemason family. My father was a Rosicrucian and a member of the Golden Dawn sect as well. So what happened in Adelaide, South Australia, where I grew up in the 70s and 80s, was my father was involved with a pedophile ring. They produced child rape material, snuff movies. They conducted satanic rituals. I was utilised as a honeypot in the trafficking. And I was used to blackmail a lot of people. I mean, my father had control of a lot of people. The major crime detectives are still looking for the big milk canisters of blackmail material that he kept. They're still trying to find it. So are we. We want to find it before they do, and they destroy it. I was also used in the MK Ultra project, and I was used for medical experimentation as well. I was infected with prions on multiple occasions, and prions were, much of that research was used to find out whether or not children would come down with prion disorders, which they don't, and also to get things together for this spike protein business that we're going through or have been going through. So I was utilised in that. And obviously the satanic ritual abuse aspect involved, I believe, ley lines. I wasn't fully aware of it back then, or I haven't fully recovered memories on that yet. But I know we went out into specific places. And one of those, I believe, was Blair National Park, and I've actually found leys in that park since and photographed them. But I was also used in the MK Ultra project as a psychic. So that was one thing that they utilised me for from the point of being in nappies. They were showing me what I assumed were Xena cards and seeing if I could pick up whether or not the person in another room was looking at a specific card. So they utilised me for that. And that also involved some of the rituals I'd be used to communicate with the entities that they were calling in, some of which were absolutely terrifying. And that's the sort of cowardly entities that we're talking about here, these people. I like to call them creatures a lot of the time, but I call them people for the sake of the podcast, because it might get confusing. They are so cowardly. They don't have these sorts of abilities that children have when it comes to psychic ability, and they will just use us as, a disposable communication device if they need it, no matter how terrifying and traumatizing that is. What I'm trying to do now with Ben Hawkes is undo some of the damage that they've done in those rituals. Obviously, I was witness to them as a child. They're still doing them. They do them on the solstices and equinoxes. They do them at Beltane. They do that on various dates throughout the year. And it's interesting because when I was watching Rory Duff, I learnt that we have harmony times with the ley lines, something that I wasn't aware of previously, and that those harmony times would happen on the 4 equinoxes and solstices throughout the year. So 21st of March, June, September and December. But what I was listening to Rory recently in an interview with Pam Gregory, and he mentioned something that just blew my mind, because I'd already intuited that this was happening. And I work as a psychic, and I have for the last 21 years. So that's how I fund being an activist. I don't have to worry about anybody sort of firing me because I speak out. I can support myself. He mentioned that those harmony times used to be very short periods, hours or days. Then they stretched out to about 45 days either side. And this is something I heard him say about a year ago. And I was like, my God, okay. Well, no, it was less than a year ago. That's half the year where we're in harmony times. Now he's saying by December of this year, and this is why people need to have a lot of hope. By December of this year, we will be in permanent harmony time, where all the ley lines are harmonized. That to me says that we have already won. We might be seeing a whole lot of crazy stuff going on, but energetically, that's us winning already. So, and I'm not one for hopium, but as soon as I heard that, I was rejoicing. I'm still smiling about it. He's a geobiologist, and he knows his stuff. So with the project, with Ben and I, we are encouraging people. So I teach people how to see ley lines. It's not difficult. They're typically, the most common ones you'll find are about 2 meters across. They create these perfect circles in nature if you're standing in a cross section of the ley line. We have CRY2 cryptochrome magneto light receptors in the retina. So just like insects and birds, we can see them. Indigenous peoples have been telling us this for millennia, but of course, science tells us no. There's been a study by Foley, Giger, and Rupert, which was interestingly published on the 21st of June, which is the winter solstice in 2011. And they've proven, this is in the National Library of Medicine, an article in there, through their studies, that we do have these cryptochrome magnetoreceptors. So we can see them. It's not difficult. And that's what I've been doing in the last year, just trying really hard to teach as many people as possible, doing things like this, interviews, trying to share the information so people know. If you get into the cross-section of a ley line out in endemic forest, you can see them in urban areas. It's just more difficult. You have to really study. But if you go out into endemic forest, the ley lines create a corridor. Plants and trees try to avoid growing within them. So you get these very tortured looking trees, and that's a sign, because they try and curve around them. Another thing that's really fascinating, psychology calls it pareidolia, where supposedly you will see a face or something like an animal in nature, and it's a nebulous stimulus, apparently. It is not nebulous. The amount of times that I've taken photographs of a ley line and there's been a face in there. The number of times that course members have shown me photographs of their ley lines and there are faces throughout. These are the spirits of the forest, the green man entity, or just basically nature spirits, fairies, communicating with us. They're saying these ley lines are really important. Help. We need your help. We need to fix what's going on. So what you were saying before about the using all these electromagnetic warfare devices, basically what they're doing is they're disrupting the ley lines, which is the Earth's energy system. It's her meridians, where they powerful areas where they cross. That's the chakras, like Mount Shasta you mentioned before, Mike. What we need to do is get out into the ley lines. We need to be able to find where they are, whether or not you are a dowser or you can actually see them through some of the, I've done quite a few interviews where I share pictures and stuff so you can see how to find them. It's really easy. Get out there, take in 432 hertz or 528 hertz positive frequencies, sing if you can sing without discord. If you've got a good voice, go out and sing. Take your positive intention for humanity, call in spirit guides or loved ones or source or whatever it is, your higher self, and ask for prosperity and freedom for humanity and for all life on earth. And this is another way that we can win this war. We have to take in these positive intentions, because basically the Satanists know how powerful it is to create discord and terror and trauma and screaming in the crossing of these leys and in the ley lines. They know how powerful that is. They've been doing that for millennia. We've got to take that away from them. And there's far more of us than there are of them. I believe that we outnumber the dark souls on this planet at least 12 to 1. And the really powerful ones that are doing these sorts of rituals, there are a lot of them, but there's nothing compared to how many good souls there are on Earth. Yeah, so that's just a bit of a rundown, basically.
So, I know in your past you're subjected to MK Ultra processing. And when you're describing that everybody has the ability to see ley lines, what we have to realize is maybe you had an intense version of MK Ultra, but we're all MK Ultra survivors. We've all been mind controlled and indoctrinated. And the way our senses work is there's incoming bits of data, but it has to be processed through our indoctrinated beliefs. And then that spits out what we're able to experience. So it takes a lot of, let's just say, rescuing ourselves, all of us, from mind control. And then, I agree, it's a simple matter of being able to see these. I worked with bodies for many years and got to the point where it was very easy to see energy lines in the body, different things in their energetic fields. And it's not something that you have to be an elevated spiritual being to do. It just takes a little practice and opening up your mind. So this is wonderful, the work that you're doing. And so can you tell us a little bit about your organization and how you formalized, your whole mission in doing this?
Yeah, well, I kept doing interviews talking about the ley lines, and one of the things that I kept saying was we need to get together and all work on this together. And I did an interview with Ben Hawkes on his Wake Up podcast in December last year. And it's interesting because I'd already intuited that I needed an Englishman to help me with this. I'd work a lot with my spirit guides. I had a lot of near-death experiences as a child, so I was lucky to have that connection with them. Not in that way lucky, but lucky to have a very strong connection. So they told me that this Englishman was going to help me. Anyway, I did an interview with Ben, and we talked about it at the end, and he was like, okay. He just hit the ground running with it. So he's organized quite a bit of it. He's written the most beautiful song. It's absolutely perfect. You know, the Satanists use etymology and spell casting against us all the time. The way he has intuited this song is spectacular. It's very, very simple, very short. Uses 432 hertz frequency. So he started with that, then he got a website together, and now we're trying very hard to get as many people as possible to join up. So we've got a website, www.leylovedown, leylovedown.com. People can just check out the website and sign up, basically. And then we're at the moment getting Discord service chats together so that, you know, Rebecca's got the Australian version. She's doing that. So you know, we're just recruiting, I guess, is the idea, inspiring, trying to get as many people as possible who want to do this and just go out and find lays, you know, and sing. And, you know, for some people, because when you look at the spiritual community, they can be very insular and they like to do these things on their own. And that is fine. People can go out on their own and sing or make music or sit in there and meditate with their positive intent. But what's really interesting is when you sing with a group of people, your heartbeats harmonize. And so they beat at the same rhythm, which is so beautiful and so pertinent to something like a ley line, which has a pulsing energy. So, yeah, so we are trying to encourage people to go out together because it makes a bigger difference.
Wonderful.
Have you considered, I remember when I was a kid, there was this thing called Hands Across America, where it was a single day. Remember this, Bear? And you remember when this happened? And they were able to organize.
Must have been before my time.
I think it was. I think you were just a wee little pup then. And I think it was like 85, 86 and 1986. And they were, I think it was for world peace or something, or AIDS. I don't know. But it was called Hands Across America. And they were able to get a chain of hands across the United States. And I remember going to our point in Anaheim, California, and getting in the chain as it came across. And it was this energy. It was really cool. So I only bring that up because I wonder if there would be a way to organize a universal moment at a certain special time of the year where we have everybody go out to their local ley line, and we'll discuss shortly here how you do that, how you find ley lines around you, and what are these ley lines and all that. But what if we did that where we had a specific time where we had thousands of people singing this song all at the same time? That could have a massive effect, you know?
That's the vision that I've had. That's exactly what I'm hoping will happen. And I keep being shown that somewhere around 2026 it will happen. Oh, wow. Which is very timely because a lot of other things are supposed to happen around that time, which will thwart what they're trying to do. So, yeah, that's exactly. Well done, Mike.
Yeah, you
precisely what I'm trying to organize.
Since we can fill up a stadium of 100,000 people for a football game, you think we'd get it together to, create world peace? Ley lines also have, as you know, but for our audience, great import on a practical level in your own home. And ley lines are everywhere. And if, for instance, there are certain ley lines going across your bedroom, especially where you sleep, there are measures that you can take. Or if you're living in a house that was previously occupied by other people, their energy lingers in those ley lines. And so, like in indigenous cultures and whatnot, people would smudge and do things very routinely to just keep clearing the energy. So I think we really need to get back into those practices. Ley lines also would be interesting to a lot of people. They're not just in the ground, but they actually go perpendicular they do go longitudinally with the ground, but they're also perpendicular going up into the atmosphere. And in biogeometry, we work with at least 4 different kinds of ley lines, and some of those are more vertical than others. So, they can literally box you in as well. So it's, it's good to know about these things that are there all the time and largely go unseen.
Can we define these for folks that are listening that might, I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think, in our culture now that most people have heard of these. I mean, it's like on History Channel now and stuff, but maybe it might be good, Rachel, from your perspective to give a bit of a definition or your concept of what ley lines actually are.
So as I said before, I would describe them as the meridians of the earth, just like the meridians of the body, the human body. So the Earth is a living planet. It's her soul frequency. So, when you go to geobiologists, they'd like to talk about the tectonic plates and the energy coming from the core and that sort of thing. To me, it's her soul frequency. It's a little bit sort of more simplified in my mind. Where these ley lines cross, there are different sized ley lines as well. You've got the dragon lines that are massive. 2 of those cross over a place called Uluru in Australia, which is this massive orange rock right in the centre of Australia. It's spectacular, and it's a very, very sacred spot. I did actually walk on Uluru in 2000, and it was completely silent. I was up there with about 20 people. Nobody said a word. It was so spiritually overwhelming. Not a bird song, no wind sound. It was complete silence. And I've since found that that's actually quite a commonality in really strong, powerful ley line crossings. You won't have any sound. Something happens, like it somehow gets absorbed, or I don't know, the reverence of the area, the birds don't sing, I'm not sure. And perhaps also, they avoid it like the plants and trees try to avoid growing within them. So you've got your dragon lines. There were 6 pairs. Oh, sorry, 6 pairs? Oh, Rory Duff spoke about this. Oh, I can't remember, it's 3 or 6. I think there were 6 pairs up until 2017 when a new dragon line appeared, another new dragon line appeared in 2018, and another one in 2019. So suddenly there's this influx of dragon lines around the time that we get this crazy stuff going on in the world. The last 4 years have been very, very difficult. So it makes you realize that they knew, those that were opposing knew that this very powerful, very spiritual time was coming, where we're coming to an ascension for the planet. And they were desperately trying to prevent that by giving us all this fear porn and freaking us out and trying to stress us out. So rest assured, the secret societies know all about the importance of the leys. They know. So you've got your dragon lines, then you've got various different sized lines or frequency variance lines, which again, Rory Duff, I refer to a lot because he's a genius, but he's actually mapped all the different kinds. Of those, I'm aware that the Hartman-Curry lines, which are actually reasonably small, can be negatively affecting over long periods. If you're sleeping in them, if you're working in them for long periods, they can have a negative effect on the body. For the most part, I would say most ley lines, if you wanted to meditate, if you wanted to connect with spirit guides or, totem animals or whatever, going into a ley line would be a very efficacious way to do that. It would make it's almost like plugging yourself into Wi-Fi. In fact, I look at the ley lines as the repository for the Akashic record, which is 5th dimensional. And I also consider the ley lines to be 5th dimensional frequency. And the 5th dimension is like a train station where all the other dimensions feed off. So this is another reason why they do the dark souls do these horrific rituals in these powerful ley line crossings, because it creates those portal spaces where the ley lines cross, or vortexes, however you want to describe them, end up being an opening, a doorway. So so death is also opening of a portal. So if you want to open up a dimensional doorway, you kill something in that space, it opens up the doorway. They can skew it then and create. So even if you take the lightest, most beautiful light soul child and murder it in a ley line crossing, you will get an inversion with their spells and their spell casting, where they can open one of the darkest dimensional hellish doorways and let something in, or pull something in. A lot of these entities that get pulled into the 3rd dimension do not want to be here. They don't want to be controlled by humans. They get very angry. So these idiot humans on Earth try to manipulate these forces for power and control here. So that just gives you a little bit of a rundown of my understanding of ley lines. To be honest, I've been photographing them for 10 years, but I've really only been fully looking into it for the last year and a half. So as much as I'd like to be an expert, I don't believe I am, but I certainly have a lot of intuitions around these things. I try to back it up by looking at, absolute experts in the field like Alfred Watkins and Rory Duff and others. So I hope I've covered that.
And where these ley lines crisscross, right at that spot, well, depending on what kind, but it can be, what we would consider a power spot. And if you look throughout the world, as all the great structures that are considered to have great influence on us are all on those ley lines. There's a great map that was made of France, an area of France where there's a lot of the old cathedrals. And they mapped out all the ley lines and had them visible on the map. And every single one of the cathedrals and churches and were all right at that exact center of the crisscross.
Yeah.
So I think somebody really knew something way back when.
In the UK, when you had your Roman time in the UK and they had their sacrificial stones, and then they would come along later and the Catholic Church wanted to build their churches, and so they would use a sacrificial stone as some sort of as like a base point. A Freemason would come along with a sighting rod to make sure that it was sighted on a ley line, and then they would produce imagery within the church of the green man to try and bring the pagans in. And this is one thing that I do try and teach a lot in the course, is that these entities, these spirits in nature, yes, they can be quite aggressive at times because human beings do a lot of damage to nature, and a lot of the fifth dimensional fairy entities are very much about protecting animals, birds, nature. They're not particularly interested in us. Angels are more concerned with human issues. But the fact that, we have psychology has come in to try and wrest away any belief in any of these things, so that, the men in white coats will come and take you away if you dare to even talk about it, to take away our understanding of what's actually extremely important, which is that these energy lines are so powerful. Indigenous cultures, they know this. They've known it for a very, very long time. They must look at us, the Indigenous people, and just think we're all idiots. Because we focus on everything that is not important, that is fleeting, and it's got to do with power and money and things that have no meaning at all on a soul level when you're a soul having a human experience. It blows my mind. We have so much to learn in the Western world, at least. Yeah.
Well, I think the good news is all the craziness that we're experiencing is doing just that. It's waking us up to this. By the way, if you can see over my this side of my head there in the back wall, that's Uluru back there.
Oh, beautiful. Awesome. Yeah.
And and again, in biogeometry, because that's the way I'm able to access a lot of what you're talking about. If you take that picture of that rock in Australia, it has a certain geometry, and you can measure with biogeometry instruments that particular picture and get the same resonance that you get if you're actually at the rock. Wow. Another thing we do is you can do Google Earth, not maps, but Earth, where it actually shows the topographical geometry, and you can measure the ley lines from Google Earth. And I wanted to bring that up because, with your work, and you have an awareness of, where certain things are going on. If people understood, even if they live thousands of miles away from some of these spots that need clearing, you could go to those lines by way of Google Earth. We do in biogeometry, we have different instruments, and we create angles, and if you put different rods on the bottom of this, then it makes them more capable picking up like Hartman versus Curry or Banker, and so forth, the different kind of ley lines. It tells you what kind of energy and so forth. So what you're doing, I think, can really be facilitated by a lot of people in a very specific way if they just understood it doesn't matter where you live. If you want to free some children that are being held captive in some tunnels in Australia, you can actually, go to Google Earth and actually affect that from wherever you live in the world.
100%.
Yeah.
Our greatest, most powerful tool is our intent. If you push your intent into something, you can make anything happen remotely. You don't have to be right there.
Exactly.
I mean, that was something that the MK Ultra program, when I was a child, I was being taught to use energy in ways that, you don't really want to be doing. But it showed me how powerful our power is. We can do things remotely very easily.
And that's the best kept secret.
Yes, it is. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a sense, as you were saying, about the West, the world in general, modern man has this linear, materialistic viewpoint of reality, right? And I think even we could fall prey to that thinking with the ley lines, but the ley lines aren't just these linear lines. They're actually, as you said, multidimensional, and they're instantaneous freeways of energy, of thought, is one way you can think of it, right? And you could use these to send stuff, and it's really interesting to think of the planet, of this world, as this living multidimensional being that is elevating itself right now, and how we can jump onto that and go to the next phase of existence. And I think that's what the chemtrails are about. And I'm curious to think if the chemtrails are kind of laid out along the ley lines in a way. Has anybody ever tried to do that, like looking at how the chemtrails go and seeing if they're paralleling the ley lines a bit?
That's incredibly, that would make so much sense. It would actually make a great deal of sense, because I hear a lot of barium and aluminium is being sprayed around you. I mean, I wouldn't really know exactly what they're spraying, and they're absolutely obsessed with it. I mean, can you imagine the amount of time and money? And it shows how powerful we are. They're so desperate to get rid of us, and it's still not working. I would have to look into that. That's a fantastic point, Mike. Thank you.
So when you're seeing the ley lines, obviously I've seen some of your videos, and you've got great photos where you can see it in nature with the grass and how the trees, and you can see sort of the tunnel, right, going through forests and things. But when you're seeing it, because you're tapped in psychically into the psychic realm, are you seeing colors? Are you seeing sort of more vibrant? How are you actually seeing it in your mind's eye?
So very similar to the photographs. It's not like it's a different color to me. It's very much the same. But what I often do with my admin for my course is a dear friend I've had for a long time, Alex, and we'll go out together ley line hunting. She feels them before I see them. She'll say, "Hang on, Rachel, stop," and then I'll look around and say, "Oh, yeah, you're right. We've got something." And it's interesting too. We've actually had birds point things out to us. I've got a totem bird called the willy wagtail, which is a kind of flycatcher. And the little grey flycatchers are the same as well. And they've pointed out to me on multiple occasions, there is something really significant here. You have to have a look. One nearly landed on my head one of these times that we're out, me and Alex. And so we knew we had to stop, and there was something really significant. We were in this massive portal space. So a lot of people feel them before they see them. What I do encourage people to do, if you think you're seeing something that looks to you like a ley line, and again, when you're standing in them, you just keep seeing perfect circles. Nature doesn't create perfect circles very often. So take a photograph, because for some reason on a photograph, they show up quite clearly. And what's beautiful is if you take your photographs home and you have them on your computer in thumbnail form, it'll stand out like nothing else. And then you can see it. And then, you might expand it and you can't see it as well. But when they're very small, you can see them really clearly. So it helps you to see that. So quite often a course member will send me a photograph and it's like, "Oh, I can't see anything there." And I'll look away, and then I'll go back to it a week later or something. It's like, "Oh my God, the poor thing. She was absolutely spot on. I just couldn't see it at the time." So it helps to sort of practice looking at them from different angles and different ways.
You're muted, Bear.
Okay. In certain locations, the veils are a lot thinner. You know, Mike was talking about we live close to Mount Shasta here, and it is one of those power spots. And I've been involved for many years in the Saint Germain Foundation at Mount Shasta. And there are gatherings there. And there's, back in the old days, there's a well-known European photographer, and he would regularly capture in the gardens around the retreat there, you know, whatever you want to call them, fairies or angels, seeing actual ascended masters in the sky, you know, above certain gatherings. And so, yeah, these things are going on all the time. And there's FPV Angel, who is kind of looks at the nature of our realm, the earth, as a functional being. They are constantly picturing out, you know, different intelligent mechanisms in the atmosphere and taking pictures of them, and they call them angels and so forth. So, yeah, you know, more than hopium, it actually makes you realize there is intelligence in the universe, and we're not just left to our own devices here. You know, we've actually got more help than what we realize.
And on the FPV side, which is a really interesting channel, Rachel, that I trip out on, they have a very different perspective on sort of the technological construct working here with the angels, but they talk about rainbows as the angels. And it would be interesting. And I know they've done some stuff on this on their channel, right, Bear, where they talk about ley lines and the ley lines connecting through rainbows.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we live in a magical realm that is so much more than what material science gives credit. And I think that's the way out in the end, right? The way out is going back to the fantasy of our imagination and knowing that that's not that isn't fantasy, that's the reality. And then that is what controls everything. And we have all these wonderful elements to play with. Like we do a lot of orgone gifting where we go around and we put orgone out and around the Wi-Fi towers and stuff to counteract those frequencies. And now I'm thinking applying that to biogeometry and the ley lines in a way that would be quite powerful. So these are really awesome ways to get active and feel like you're doing stuff, right? Like where you're really making a difference. And it's not out fighting the man, right? It's which is really important too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it is an energetic war. That's what we're fighting here.
Yes,
it always has been, but this time round, it's really obvious in so many different ways. And the thing is, with the orgone or with anything else, if you have the intent of wanting to do the healing, of wanting to clear the lines, of wanting to make sure that, you know, there's prosperity and freedom for all living things on earth, putting anything into the ley line is going to be a positive thing because your intent is there. It's your desire, your heart space is to protect and to help and to create freedom. So, I mean, I do believe highly in orgone. I've got my house full of it. So we're not as powerless as we feel. And I think that's what the last 4 years have been desperately trying to prove to us, that we're powerless. I think it's gone absolutely the opposite way. It's been empowering for most people. Well, for the very spiritual people. I think we've all realized just how much power we've got in a positive way.
Yeah, and in that sense, it really feels like the best of times, even though it seems like everything's going down the toilet at the same time. You know, yeah, crazy. You know, ley lines too, they're a place where they are bringing in energy from every dimension. And going back to our programming, we are, you know, indoctrinated to decipher you know, decode incoming sense information in a linear pulsation kind of cause and effect, which keeps us or prevents us from entering into those multi-dimensional realities that would not only increase our bandwidth of perception greatly, but also bring all the solutions that don't seem possible in a linear cause and effect reality.
Yeah, and this is the thing. We are multidimensional beings because every chakra connects us to a different dimension as well. So we are like a living embodiment of the ley line in itself because all the dimensions come off our body. And this is why, I mean, children are naturally psychic. Children are naturally aware of otherworldly entities. It's just we drum into them that they're crazy, or we're scared that someone's going to hear and say, oh, that person's child's crazy. So we sort of drum it out of them. Interestingly, most children's psychic ability starts to disappear around the age of 5, and that's the advent of education system, the supposed education system. That whole paradigm of education has to completely shift and change. And it's my hope that, children will be taught how to protect themselves from otherworldly entities, how to clear a space, how to be aware of these things so that they can also be saved and protected. It's because we leave our children so vulnerable that I think a lot of what's going on is happening, because we leave them vulnerable in many ways. The destruction of the nuclear family means they're vulnerable because they go into institutions and they can have agendas pushed on them. They can be sexually abused. They can be traumatized, dissociated. That makes them great little slaves later on in life. It's just this whole program in the Western world to completely take away any power that a child might have. And they are, even though they're in a small body, one of the most powerful creatures on the earth, because they haven't been dumbed down yet. So, I would hope to have some sort of academy or school or something at some point at a later date where children are protected in some way through their own education, a proper education. In Eastern countries, the parents put eyeliner around the children's eyes to protect them from the evil eye. They give them amulets. They do all sorts of things to protect their kids. We do nothing of that in the Western world. It's a mess.
I jumped it back, Bear, into the Ringing Cedars books again. Are you familiar with the Ringing Cedars books? Rachel Anastasia out of Russia. She's a mystic out of Siberia.
It sounds familiar.
Okay, so we've done some shows on it, and I've been called to start reading them again. And I just bring this up because I think one of the fundamental issues we face, and this is worldwide, is that the very way that most humans are brought into the realm is through carnal desire, an expression of sex, versus a conscious conception. She talks about that the very conception of a son or daughter must happen way before the sexual act. And that has to do with, once again, this higher understanding of us being multidimensional and being these consciousness driven beings, and not just the physical act, right, of the sperm going into the egg and creating the zygote and all that. No, it happens way before that. And so most children are here because of a carnal act of desire, not through a conscious act of love. And that's why we see this, the sexual desires everywhere driving society, and, pornography out of just insane now. And and it's just on all the kids' phones now and stuff. And I think that really hit home for me when I was reading book 6 a couple days ago. And it's like, wow, yeah, I mean that. And then of course she talks about the kin's domain. So you, not only do you conceive in your own land in nature, but then you give birth at the same place. And that sets now a landmark for that person coming onto the land, probably tied in through the ley lines coming through your land. And now you have a sacred union with the planet, with Mother Earth. And now you have your family there too, on your own space. That is a space of love. And then you also have your homeschooling in a community there when you're learning all this stuff. So that's an amazing path forward. And we are starting to see more of that in the United States, thanks to our friend Gabriel with the Anastasia Foundation. So there are people waking up to this, and this overall idea that, getting kids. In fact, I just saw a thing that there's more children now being homeschooled than ever in the United States. Than ever. Thank you, COVID.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you, stupid overlords that think they know everything and they really know very little. Very interesting, because the souls that come from the other dimensions to come into a mother's body come through the ley lines. And when we pass over, we go through the ley lines to go out to those dimensions. So, it's, and our Indigenous people in Australia used to have birthing areas in ley lines because it's so powerful. Alfred Watkins speaks about in the UK, when someone died, they would carry the coffins along the ley lines so that the soul could exit. All these things have been lost. And when you take a woman and force her into a hospital situation, hospitals are places of torture. and death. And that's where you get your darkest entities will exist there to try and suck up that loose energy. So that's the last place you would want to have a baby. Absolute last place. And of course, then they do the separation immediately, try and destroy the mother-child bond by taking the baby away from the mother immediately after birth. It's interesting you mentioned, I think, Barre earlier, arenas. A lot of the arenas in the world where they have these big stadiums, where they do these big rituals, where people are lauded for their physical strength and fighting and winning over one another, that competition, they are usually in the crossing of very powerful ley lines. It's, again, that loose energy. Very interestingly, Taylor Swift had concerts here in Australia, and she had literally a big billboard at the end of her stage with a ley line and a mark tree. Mark trees are something that Alfred Watkins describes in his book, The Old Straight Track. So she was lauding the fact that she was on a ley line in that spot, and the way that it was set up, the stage itself was on the ley. Now that was at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which if you look on Google Earth looks like a massive eye, a single eye. She also did it at Accor Stadium in Sydney, and in that backdrop she made it this lurid red orange colour. So they were just sort of pointing it out in a very obvious way, which was rather disturbing, that this is the crossing of ley lines. We are harvesting that loose energy. And the Australian women that went along to the concert screaming and crying and doing very similar things they did to, like in the Beatles concerts, this very grieving, like we can't be like her, or we're so close but we can't touch her. This worship thing that people do is just bizarre. No one should ever worship anybody. We should be the heroes of our own life story, not in an egocentric way, but in a way that we are our own saviors. We sort ourselves out.
But
you can
nothing's
aspire.
changed. They were doing that in Greece too.
Exactly.
I mean, there's, and in Rome, but it happened to be a female representing Dionysus, or in Persia, Sophia, or whatever. It's always the same thing. It's just repeating itself over and over again. And I feel like the cycle is finally, we have a chance to really break it. I think we really do have this awakening happening right now that probably only comes very, very few times, as in the history of and you started in the beginning. I don't know if we had hit record yet or not, but saying that you believe we've always been here and we're not some sort of Anunnaki DNA experiment. I think you were kind of hinting at that. And Bear, I know for myself, I won't speak for Bear, but I'm in total resonance with that. And the Anastasia, who I was mentioning, Ring of Cedars book, she says that. A lot of the spiritual teachers and stuff that I read, they all state that. I think that is a big psyop, this Anunnaki, DNA thing.
Agreed.
Yeah,
and if you look at the original Russian author who started putting that out, he's been exposed pretty thoroughly over the last few decades. So all part of the psyop. Like we're from somewhere else, we're kind of a mistake, and we're engineered by higher intelligences. Now, ain't happening. So, Rachel, don't you think that some of the incoming souls, because of this larger cycle that we're going into, which I believe is the beginning of the third and final golden age on this planet, don't you think they're coming in dialed in a little bit differently than past generations?
Oh, yes. 100%. So I see auras. That was one thing that I was used for as a child. And around 2015, the clients that I was reading for were coming to me pregnant, saying, what soul color is my baby? And I kept getting these gold souls were coming through. It's something I'd seen very little of previously, which blew my mind. I was also told at the time to tell my clients that they would be telekinetic, or telekinesis would be a normal thing that would sort of fairly accepted in years to come, which I felt like an idiot saying back then. We have literally just come into this golden age. When Rory Duff mentioned that we're coming into a harmony time for all the ley lines in December, that fits with everything that I kept seeing coming up to this point. So we have souls here now that are being born, and a lot of people are ascending at the same time. Again, with the aura reading that I do, most readings I do visually, and I can see that people are going up levels. In the last 4 years, people have gone up levels. Normally a lifetime or several lifetimes to go up one level. People are doing it in the last 4 years, 2 or 3 levels. Unbelievable. Never seen anything like that. I've been seeing auras my whole life. So we are definitely coming into what I would describe as a golden age.
And one of the biggest psyops of all time, of course, is through religions that tell us that only one person has made the ascension, and that even though he says greater things ye shall do, and a lot of other,
yeah,
when he says I am, of course, he's not saying that in his personage so much. So yeah, and when you get into some of the oldest ascended master teachings that have been around forever, they will not just tell you, but actually give you visible proof that tens of thousands of people have made their ascension. There's also a very famous picture within closed circles at the Saint Germain Foundation over here, where it has a picture of somebody making their ascension. And, just literally lifting up. So, and then also, in some of the books, they describe some of the people that have made their ascension also. So it's really the natural thing that we're supposed to do. We get a little bit into the weeds here with science and, like with the waveform mechanics and Walter Russell. And through that, you find out that even the elements on the periodic table are constantly transmuting themselves through different octaves and tonal fields, and until they hit that radioactive level, in which case, they're just in this higher energy state. So all of life everywhere is always ascending. And, to really have it stretch our imagination that we aren't capable of the same thing is really something.
Isn't it? Yeah, I get very frustrated.
And you can see it in the physiologically, right? You can see people that actually physically, if materially in their body, are changing too and becoming more vital and stronger. And as you said, then having abilities, right? And we talked about this on the last show, the Masters of the East. What was that book, Bear? A great book. Spalding wrote Life and Teachings of the Masters of the East. I've got one of them here.
Oh yeah, it's a good one.
And these were, Western university, anthropologists and people from major universities in the West who went out to Tibet and actually connected with some of these masters and witnessed teleportation and all sorts of, things that seemed impossible. That is very possible when you get out of the linear thinking and when you start to realize the power we have as multidimensional beings. And this was done this was like in the late 1800s. Some people might call this just woo-woo nonsense, but it seems like that there is a grand tradition of this, and it's great when you have Western scientific minds, like in this book, validating it. So yeah, I think what's fun about this is you can start playing with this, you guys. You can start doing this, whether that be like what Bear's doing with biogeometry, or working on your psychic abilities, working on lucid dreaming, tapping into all of this. This stuff's real. Like, I've seen the future before, and it's happened. When I was really doing a lot of lucid dreaming, Rachel, I've seen, like, when I was going out one night, I knew exactly what was going to happen the whole night. It hit me like a vision. I knew the whole night what was going to happen. I was going out to DJ in Hollywood. I knew exactly who I was going to meet, what was going to happen, where I was going to end up that night. And it was so random because it was nothing I had planned, and it all happened. Now, some would say, well, you manifested that. Or some would say that we live in a non-linear reality where everything is sort of, where that's how precognition works, is that because we're in a non-linear fractal reality, that everything's happening all at once, I guess. I don't know. But you've said that in previous interviews. I've heard that you had that power, and you can tap into the quote unquote future, correct?
That's my job. That's what I do on a day.
That's your job.
I have to.
Great job description.
Clients don't see a psychic because they want to know what happened in the past. They want to know what's going to happen for them. So I've had to practice, and I've done that, daily for many years, 21 years. What would have happened for you, Mike, is that your crown chakra would have opened, and that's the seat of precognition. So you would have been able to see the future, and I dare say you'd still be able to see the future if you concentrate well enough, and if you allow yourself to actually think, okay, well, that actually happened. I saw that beforehand. The more you find you trust it, the more it will happen for you. And I would say you're probably at the white soul level, which is the next level above now. So are you unable to drink alcohol already?
I quit alcohol in 2018 or 19.
Yeah. So your ascension's well on the way. So you'll probably come into that gold soul frequency pretty soon. So that Christ consciousness level, that gold soul frequency, is what Jesus basically embodied, and that's where humanity is going. So if you think about it, telekinesis, telepathy, transmuting materials, alchemy, we all have that capability. Very soon, I believe most of humanity will have that level.
Can we dig into the alcohol thing a little bit? Because it's funny. So I've been a professional DJ for going on 20 years. And in Hollywood, to get a little loose in the club, I would drink, and I got pretty heavy into it. Never had an issue with it. But it's funny, as I started, what's that here?
Shocking.
But as I was having this sort of spiritual unfolding, I know it can kind of sound cheesy, but in the last 10 years, and like really starting to figure out this stuff. And Bear has been a huge mentor for me. He's the one that introduced me to Saint Germain and a lot of these things. It got to the point where physically I could not drink alcohol anymore. It would make me sick with just having a couple drinks, where I was ruined, and I'd never experienced it before, to the point where my soul, my spirit was telling me, you need to stop doing this. And it is interesting. They call it spirits, right?
Yes, exactly. So there is something that happens when your soul frequency gets to a really high level. It's difficult for your body to keep up. So it cannot tolerate toxins anymore. Also, again, if you're going to get to a really high soul level, you cannot allow doorways into your auric field through things like alcohol, heavy drugs. I can understand people doing microdosing with certain things, but, really hard drugs, manufactured, not natural ones you get in nature, but the manufactured stuff, pharmaceutical drugs, they will all create holes in the aura, and you can let things in, and you just cannot afford to allow that to occur. As the more powerful you become, you have to really step up the protection by not imbibing of those things.
We use the term psychic, and I know, what you're meaning when you say psychic, but there is a real psychic realm in the earth strata that you want to stay away from. It's like the landfill of human everything. So, a lot of people that will do channelings or other practices, or like you say, take drugs or alcohol, I think is actually probably the worst. It does open the door for all those trapped souls in those realms to come into your home, and it's not a good idea.
Yeah, we have a lot of fourth dimension in the spirit world is actually a timeless dimension, and that's where souls that suicide, for instance, get stuck. And if they've got nowhere to go, and they're stuck in your location, because a lot of people who take their lives in a particular location cannot leave that location. They're stuck there. So you've then got a hungry spirit, as the Buddhists would call it, that needs to tap in, or that they're bored. You know, they've got to interact with something, so they'll have a go at you. And you know, you're going to feel sorry for them. They need people to help them to pass over. But yeah, you've got a lot of lower level, not so powerful demons too that get stuck on the earth plane because they don't want to go where they belong. And they'll also tap in and steal energy. So there's so many different things that people need to be aware of.
Thought forms and spooks and egregoric entities that are, you know, that are collectively there, that it's a lot of resonant feelings and emotions trapped in there. And if you're not going in with your armor on and you're going in high on some drug, or, you know, it's interesting, what is the dominant drug of, especially in the United States in the last 100 years, is alcohol. I mean, it's so prevalent in all of society in the West, right? Like when you think of going out and doing anything in culture, it revolves around alcohol. It dominates. I was just watching some old 60s films that are really highly, you know, lauded films, and were great to watch. And there was so much booze in those, so much smoking and drinking. It's really quite fascinating to see how that is just dominated the consciousness of the West for so long. It's
just so the opposite of developing on a spiritual level. It's just the complete opposite of that. So that's what's lauded by the governments. That's what the agenda is, to focus on that. They make a lot of money out of it, so that we will not go down the psychic route, and we will not go, you know, into ourselves and find out what our power is. We'll just stay slaves.
Yeah. So yeah, Rachel, now what are you up to coming into this summer? And what are your plans? Are you doing any events, or how are you what's your way of getting this information out? Doing shows like this, or doing any in-person stuff?
Doing lots of interviews, and sort of Ben and I are working on that at the moment, trying to get the word out as much as possible. I do also teach a course, so I do that every second month. And yeah, I did do an Acapulco, oh gosh, August last year, I believe it was. So I wasn't able to attend physically because I'm so far away, but I did a live meeting.
Oh, cool.
And that was basically to help people to work out how to protect children from all the stuff we're talking about today, basically. Yeah, that was my presentation. So yeah, I don't have anything specific that's coming up as far as events, but I usually only know about a month beforehand, and then I'm into it. I am going to be presenting something pre-recorded at Glastonbury with my friend Fergus Greenwood O'Connor. Yeah, so that'll be exciting. So that's coming up in June, July.
So with the children, I know at one time in your past you were able to identify some of the trafficking tunnels.
Yes.
And they actually got shut down. Is that true?
So what's amazing is that my father's property that I grew up on Macklin Street in Edwardstown had a hidden cellar. He built the house himself. So he had his own brick maker. He made the cellar out of the bricks that he could make himself. It already had an established telecommunications bunker. So basically the area that I grew up in used to be an old terracotta tile factory. The whole area was clay. And so what they did is as they dug out the clay, they built the brick kilns and the tile kilns at the lower level. Then they called that Vermont at the time. And there was another place in New South Wales also called Vermont doing the same thing, creating these tiles. They brought fill in to cover over all of these old kilns and turned them into places where people used to throw their rubbish, or they'd have a cellar, or it was a cold store. And then in 1938, they had a mandate in South Australia that every house, business or meeting place had to have a tunnel, trench or bunker within 20 feet of the back door. Now have a think about that. Every single place had to have one of those. The entirety of Adelaide is undercut with tunnels, trenches, bunkers. They're everywhere. There was a very clever gentleman who did a thesis on this called Martin Wimmer. And I looked through his thesis, and unfortunately for my local area, there was nothing. But I did a lot of research, and I had people all over the world help me with that research. And we discovered that during this 1938 mandate, these tunnels were built to the bunkers in the area My father had a piece of property that had one of these bunkers on it. There's a telecommunications bunker within about 600 metres on South Road, and that's well established. The council knows about that. I rang the current place, Australian Motors Master, and they told me about it. They call it the dungeon. You don't have these telecommunications bunkers isolated. They have to be peppered along because you need runners to run between them back in the 1930s. So my father had the bunker. There was a set of tunnels to other bunkers in the area because they had a very large workforce in that area. So that was one set of tunnels and bunkers that I was taken to. There are also the telecommunications tunnels that are on every main street and every main road in Australia that are walkable. So they're everywhere. In fact, they're on the side streets in the suburb that I grew up in, which is very unusual. You don't get that usually. There's a tunnel that goes down the side street all the way to the Lando boys' home that is within a very short distance from my father's house, a few streets away or a couple of streets away. I won't say too much because we're on YouTube, but there was a butcher and a bakery in between, and 106 boys went missing from that boys' home. Now, the other third lot of tunnels that I was trafficked through were also the stormwater tunnels. So I have mapped them and I've proven that in a document. No one can prove that otherwise. What's really interesting is my father was involved in the disappearance and murder of the 3 Beaumont children, which is a famous case in Australia. These children went missing in 1966 on Australia Day, a terrorisation campaign for the Australian people. My father had impunity from prosecution. He died in 2017. I did have an investigation going on with the Special Crimes Unit when he died. I think he might have got the pillow treatment. It would have been very inconvenient for him to live at that point. And then the investigation ceased because you can't convict a corpse, apparently. So, but what's actually happened very recently is my brother, Andrew McIntyre, who had my father's co-accused in the Beaumont disappearance, Anthony Munro, imprisoned for 10 years for the abuses he perpetrated against Andrew in the 60s when all of this was going on. My brother was told by a major crime detective recently that they know that our father was involved in the disappearance and murder of the Beaumont children, but they cannot investigate the properties where because there are multiple victims, not just at one property where they're buried, but at another property, because of the suppression order on something that's called the Mulligan Inquiry. But that Mulligan Inquiry, which was in 2007, was about state wards that went missing. It had nothing to do with the Beaumont children. The Beaumont children were outside the terms of reference. So that proves to us that our father was involved in the disappearance of possibly all of those 106 boys from the Glandore boys' home, very close to our house, and the 600 odd that went missing from the Goodwood orphanage, which was within about 3 kilometres. So I saw on the Stansbury property where the Beaumont children are buried in a sinkhole, there was another sinkhole that my father took me into, another tunnel situation that was channeled out through water through the limestone over many years. He made me go into this tunnel, and I went into this small cave sinkhole, and there was about, I couldn't count at the time, I was only 5, but I estimate because it was a small fence of skulls, small skulls. So there were about 50 skulls in there. So my father used to keep treasures. And on the night he died, my dodgy brother, who owns the property now, burnt several small fires at 1 a.m, which was reported on by media, mainstream media at the time. So I've recently been acknowledged for the abuse that my father perpetrated against me officially. So I believe it's all going to come out pretty soon, what happened there, which will be, validating, particularly for I've had 12 years of concentrated trolling, because people are paid to make sure that people like me don't speak out.
Sure.
But since I've had this official acknowledgement now, there's a very good chance that the rest of my family members who are also abused by my father will speak out. They've been too scared to do so previously. So this will all blow wide open very soon. It is extremely unusual for a satanic ritual abuse survivor who speaks about it publicly to ever get any kind of official acknowledgement. That's just unheard of.
So how do your family members feel about the work you're involved with the ley lines?
I have contact with a very few of them. One wasn't very happy about me talking about my psychic ability publicly. It's who I am. And so, we don't have a lot of contact now because she's rather annoyed. But the other family members that I do have contact with, they're psychic too. So they don't have any issue with it.
Did you have any, did you know Fiona Barnett at all, or have relations with her at all?
I do know of her information, yeah.
Yeah. And was your father by chance associated with Nicole Kidman's father? Because I know she made pretty crazy accusations, and it's been even in the mainstream about Anthony Kidman being a trafficker through the universities and stuff.
He did have a very close mate, I'll use that word mate, who was involved with Sydney University. Mm-hmm. And she studied under Fiona Barnett's MK Ultra mind controller. She studied hypnosis and psychology at Sydney University under Wendy Louise Walker. So there is a definite connection there. My father was also connected with the Hamilton Burn sect. In fact, I have cousins with the surname Hamilton. So one of which was a very high up politician in my state. So, you know, I believe he was connected with a lot of what was going on in Australia.
And was he working for any agencies or anything, or what was his official?
Yeah, he was an ASIO operative, which is the equivalent of your CIA. His day job, which was very open about, was a line tapper, telephone line tapper for Telecom, the telecommunications company here. He had access to the maps of all of the telecommunications tunnels as a result of that work. So brazen. It was very brazen. He'd just go around telling people, I listened to people's phone calls, and he'd laugh and snigger about it, and that was his job. That's what he did. But in the meantime, he was blackmailing people using my body and God knows how many other children's bodies to control. So he was a very confusing man, because he also really resented the fact that he was being utilised in that way. It's a complicated creature. Glad he's gone. Well, I assume he's gone. I wasn't allowed to see his body when he died. Nobody would let me look at his body to make sure that he was definitely dead, because it was too convenient for him to die at the time that he died. So I just assume he's dead.
So it seems to be an indelible nexus between government and these operations. Is there any part of any government, do you think, that isn't involved?
In my country, no. In fact, I really do not think that politics as it is at the moment will remain in place for too much longer. It is all going to collapse.
Agreed.
Yeah, we've postulated that the United States very well, for the first time in its history, not have an election this year. And
yes,
that could be the result of a power outage through a supposed solar flare, that maybe they EMP it, take out the grid. The grid down scenario seems to be more and more like something that would fit the bill, and blame it on a solar flare. But it's that, or they're going to just try to take out Trump now, I guess, through the legal system. And just make it very clear, we are very apolitical here. We come from an understanding that we mentioned Tom Barnett earlier, and you might be familiar with some of his work, but on the law side. But when you understand that all of government is basically public corporate entities, right? That essentially what the president is CEO of a corporation. And really, as Bear likes to say, it's none of our business. As a U.S. as a natural born U.S. national, if you will, or state national here, wherever we want. We don't even, just as a man living on the land here. It's none of our business.
Yeah, just a little side note with all the legal awareness that's happening now, and we're involved with different groups that are teaching people that they are not and shouldn't be in the jurisdiction of these corporate governments. Corporations from the root of corpse, so it's a big death cult in the first place. But a lot of it has to do with changing status, reverting back to your original statehood status versus a corporate citizen. But what we fail to realize, there's something also called standing. And all of us, in our natural standing, we don't even have to file paperwork or do a lot of nonsense to notice these corporations in the first place, because it's literally has nothing to do with us. Going back to the tunnel systems, these, of course, aren't unique to Australia. And just fairly recently, as I'm sure you're aware, a whole underground tunnel system was identified in New York City. And it was linked to, since this is YouTube, I will not mention the group of people who is not to be named, but
Yes.
that particular religious sect was very much involved. And when they started identifying these tunnels, and they all started surfacing to street level like rats coming out of a sewer. And, so this stuff's real. And the good news, it's all getting exposed. And
Yes.
I think there's a lot of good folks behind the scenes that are helping it happen.
And yes, I'm sorry, I forgot, you asked me a question before, has it stopped? I do know of one perpetrator in the area that was still abusing. This is why I went public and actually started doing interviews in 2018, because this creature was still abusing in the same location, someone who had abused me in childhood. He went bankrupt early this year, which I cannot tell you how happy I was to hear that. This is someone who attracted a $500,000 fine for unclassifiable porn, because he used to own a pawn shop, a sex shop. And for some reason, he never seemed to suffer as a result. It's like they never applied it. Well, I kept talking about it. Now he's gone bankrupt. So he's actually had to sell his home. Now, generally, and that also, I believe, was connected. There's a big tunnel system just behind his house. I'm sure he would have had connection to it. That will probably just get passed on to somebody else in the group. But I've made so much noise about that tunnel system, it would make it very difficult for them to actually operate there now.
Well, look at our government working in conjunction with the cartels right now and bringing the illegals in. It's all a big child trafficking ring. They're just doing it right out in the open and saying, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, even though we can see it happening, with our own eyes. So, yeah, it's the one thing more than anything that just breaks my heart. And I think it takes, like you said, we outnumber them, I think, a lot more than 12 to 1. And we just have to, maybe we're going to have to put our foot down someday. Trump right now, of course, just got found guilty on all counts. And of course, what they really wanted to do is put him in jail. And again, not making him out to be a savior or anything. On the other hand, he does have some nationalistic tendencies. And yeah, I don't think there's going to be elections here for sure, or else it'll just be an obvious banana republic selection, in which case I think that what would prevent an election here is just people uprising, after they throw them in jail. So it looks like that's where they're heading us. But it all, they want the kids, they want the children. And the strongest kind of magic is sex magic. And that's why they use these young, pure souls and subject them to it, as you know very well.
Exactly. It is the strongest magic that they have. We have far more powerful magic, as you know. Yeah, it far outweighs their anything that they can do. This is the thing with these dark elements. They may seem to be working quite well together at the moment, but I assure you, behind the scenes, it's a mess. I tune into it, it's an absolute mess. They are absolutely stuffing up on every count. Everything they're doing is absolutely hopeless. So the darker the element, the more difficult it is for them to work with each other, because it's all ego, power, self. They can't unite. We can easily, because we're not about ego. So that's why we're going to win. I'm totally confident of that. I had fears from 2018 onwards. I had intense anxiety. I knew something was coming. 2021, September 2021, all the anxiety left. So I don't think we're coming into a third world war. We're not coming into anything horrible or terrifying. We're seeing the last little tantrum before it falls apart. That's my opinion.
Interesting you say that, because that's a very common conversation we find in our circles, is that people are just detaching from the fear and not even trying. It just doesn't have the same impact anymore.
which is so beautiful. That's exactly what we need to do. It's
Yeah.
our intent, our powerful tool, our intent. If we're not in fear, it's not working.
They happen to be the ones that are in fear.
Yes.
And fear runs them and empowers them. And they're going upstream against nature and against the entire design system. And they're hijacking bloodlines and you know, doing this dark magic and stuff. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy. Right. And it's where it's so easy just to go with the natural design of how this is supposed to work. And we've been co-opted by them to do the work for them. We talk about this a lot through our own ego and our own fears and our own ignorance. And it's really great to see the awakening happening because people, I think, are stepping out of empowering them. And that's like you mentioned the guy who got busted, who was, you know, and someone will fill in the, you know, the space where he left and vacated. Well, if people, you know, stopped using pornography online and stopped going to Walmart, we talk about this all the time, stop feeding the system. It's not easy. It takes, you know, intention, and it takes practice, and it takes sacrifice, and you're not going to do it overnight. But I think the more we distance ourselves from this and get into parallel systems and move into our own beautiful way of living by ourselves without feeding the system, then it just kind of dies off. And it's a spiritual thing too, obviously. It's not all just this materialistic side, but that plays a huge role in materialistically what we do every day with our money and our intention and all of that. Wouldn't you agree?
And
Absolutely.
reconnect with nature.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And that's one thing too. We have all these beautiful light souls that are helping us on the other side. All they have are a bunch of demons that want them dead anyway. I mean, how can they possibly win in that scenario? And I've watched them calling these entities up, and they do not want to be in the third dimension. They see human beings as beneath them, many levels beneath them. They want nothing to do with us. And these idiots call them up and try and control them. And so that will be their downfall also, because they're aligned with the wrong side. It's inevitable. Sometimes I feel sorry for them. It's rare, but occasionally I do, because they're so stupid. Yeah.
Well, Cathy's asked this a few times in the chat, so I'm going to honor this question. She's asking to ask you about what about children on the spectrum? So I assume she's talking about, you know, children with different mental capacity.
Yeah. So I've
autism,
long believed that the autism and Asperger's and a lot of the other labels are basically pathologizing psychic ability, because a lot of these children are very, very, very sensitive, extremely sensitive. What they need is help with their sensitivities. And if you help them with diet and with energetic protection, I believe some of those symptoms, and I've seen it, some of those symptoms will fall away, and they won't be so reactive or dissociative.
In my practice years, you know, I had a lot of parents would bring in their kids that were so-called dyslexic and other sorts of what they considered abnormalities. And my whole thing was that, no, these souls are just rejecting the indoctrination. And it became very apparent to me. And we actually started working with these kids from where they wanted to go, rather than fixing them so they could be indoctrinated more easily. And it turns out that a lot of these kids that were having so-called learning disorders and not doing well in school were the most brilliant kids out there.
Of course. And you get certain soul frequencies, like pink souls will not be told what to do. And they're the ones that get these diagnoses, because they won't be told what to do. Thank God for the people like that. You know, if you've got someone in that sort of frequency, you put them into the education system, the first thing they're going to do is tell the teacher that they're an idiot. And you can't have that. Yeah, I'm glad. Thank God for doctors like you, because you're rare, unfortunately.
Sounds like you, Bear, in grammar school.
Yes, I rebelled very heavily all the way, and yeah, never would have made it to college if it wasn't for athletic scholarships, and decided I wanted to do something. And, you know, when I was there, so I started actually cracking a book or two so I could do what I wanted to do. But yeah, early on, I just horrible troublemaker, always in hot water, and went out of my way to never do assignments, never read a book, and in hindsight, I realize now why. But, growing up in a kind of system, and it was a parochial system, both Mike and I came from that, and it was very academic oriented, and you get a lot of flack for, not just going along with the program.
Yeah, we're talking, everything in the education system is left-brained, logical, taken completely away from the right brain, intuitive aspect, so that we will do what we're told. So we don't think outside the system. We don't think outside the square, which is what they don't want. They don't want us to be amazing little aspects of the God consciousness. They want us to do what we're told, be slaves. So congratulations, you're one of the smart ones.
Hello, troublemaker.
Wow. Yeah, I'm guilty as well. Had a few Saturday detentions, we'll say. It's been a great chat, Rachel, and I can just feel your energy coming through the screen here. It's really feeding me with just so much gratitude for what you represent, which is the power of spirit to overcome all, no matter how dark it may seem. And with the gal who asked about her granddaughter with autism, what's beautiful when this understanding is like something that can seem so dire. I mean, we even had on a private group chat talking about something as crazy as, complete like Down syndrome and reversing that, which seems like insane if you take modern science, perspective on genetics and all of that. But once again, that's all based on the foundation of pure materialism. And when you can tap into the true sciences of the spirit, that's when the miracles happen, right? What modern man calls miracles. And thank you for, being a living embodiment of the powers, the true powers that we have, and doing what you do. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just saying it, but what you are involved with is truly heroic, and you're an inspiration. So thank you so much. And we definitely need to stay in touch here. And so glad we got to know each other a bit here.
Oh, likewise, guys. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. It's if we didn't have people like you, people like me would not have a voice.
Well, it's fun. We talk about the new media, and it's so simple. You just turn a camera on, get a microphone, and it's not that hard these days, right? And I guess that's another great sign of where we're going, right? Like, old media is dead. Was that you, I think, on a recent interview, you were saying like one of your local channels just shut down?
Yes.
Yeah, like TV channels are shutting down, like the broadcast is done.
Yeah. That's also News Corp. News Corp is also going down the drain, which is it's just warms my heart. It really does.
Yeah. What more proof do we need? And the fact that, you're on the other side of where we live here, and everybody is coming to the same conclusion all at once. We're all finding each other. So there's definitely a resonance that's affecting us all, and it's about time.
Yeah. Look forward to the full harmony time, guys. December's going to be amazing.
I look forward to that. We'll have to reconnect around then. That'll be your summer,
Awesome.
our winter. We're coming into summer now. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. And once again, guys, in the show notes below, you can find her website, which is the laylovedown.com. And then you're on Rumble, right? Is that your main channel?
Rumble, BitChute, Telegram, YouTube, all just with my name, and at Weasel. At Weasel 8888 on Twitter.
Great. Go find Rachel, follow her, support her work, and let's work towards organizing that worldwide ley line activation 2026. It sounds like that sounds perfect.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that, but I'm going to go do my work. I'm going on a little backpacking trip this weekend with one of my sons. We'll be up in the mountains, about 5,000 elevation, Southern Oregon, going to a lake, and I will be looking out for the ley lines and we do a lot of that, and you get into these forests and it gets really quiet, and you know, you just all of a sudden it's like, what's going on? Is there like an animal, you know, some predator or something? But it's, yeah, we're crossing through a ley line, and I'm going to be a lot more conscious about that now. So thank you.
Beautiful. Well, enjoy.
Well, we will. Thank you. And thanks again, Rachel. This has been an awesome chat. Guys, remember to smash those thumbs up, subscribe, share with your friends and family. Helps us get this out everywhere. Also, remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go for a hike, show Mother Nature some love. She'll show it right back to you. Go find your local ley line and sing to it. And we'll see you next week, next Thursday, back to the normal time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, with Dr. Kelly Brogan is returning, promote her new book. That should be a fantastic chat. Really looking forward to that. And we'll see you at Music and Sky. Get your tickets if you haven't yet. Come hang with Bear and I in person. And actually, we're doing singing workshops at this, and of course, dance and breath work and all that. But we're actually doing a lot of singing at this event together, group singing. So it should be a beautiful time. Okay, guys, thanks. We'll see you next week. Love y'all. Cheers.